Where are you from?
California.
But where were you born then?
New Jersey.
Oh, so what? Are you black then?
Yes, I'm black. I'm African American.
Your race is African American?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Well, you're very articulate.
Thank you.
I think you certainly represent your race very well. Okay. Yeah, so what's really the problem, though? I don't understand why that's that big of an issue. I mean, if you can't stand the heat, you know, as a woman, stay out of the kitchen. So why is this any different?
I don't know. I feel this has something to do with my race. I feel like I wonder if people accept me as a black woman and a professional and a scholar.
And I'm a little overweight, so I understand what it means to be in a marginalized group, and I have to deal with that as well. But I just work through it. I work through it, and I generally come out on top. So
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I see some people, like other professionals I know, and it seems like people just give them things just because they're white or because they're men, and nobody's ever just like given me things. I felt like I've had to fight for everything that I have.
Well, not scholarships though, right? That's yeah, and maybe what you're seeing is like I said, it's been a man's world, and maybe you're just trying to find your place in that. What do you think you could do to maybe ease your way into that world without causing too much of a stir? Well, then let's see where the chips fall.
I mean, I like to think it's a fair process, but that's just not what I've seen in my life,
Yeah. Life isn't fair, is it?
I guess not.
But I think what's really interesting is, the dynamics of our culture and tradition, patriarchy, religion, machismo. I haven't had a relationship with my father because of that, because, of the fear in him, I feel, of accepting, and opening up to learning what it means to be gay, and to accept what it means to have a gay son. When I started really hearing more about, gay, and in very negative terms, right, that, gay people go to hell, and, gay people are not accepted, and gay people are not, healthy people, really hit home when I was like 13, 14, going on to 15, to the point, where I did, consider committing suicide during that time. I just couldn't bear that if I were to come out, that I was gonna lose my mother like I did with my father.
The first time I ever heard the word faggot was at church. One of the other older girls, and I was like 4 or 5, she's like, "You look like a fag." I remember that being one of the most traumatic things because I didn't understand what the word fully meant at the time.
I think I was about 18 when I told my mom I was bi. At least that's what I thought it was at the time. And I remember my father's prescription for getting back on the right track was to go listen to some gospel records.
You have to know that you're controversial.
Yeah.
So have you struggled with homosexuality?
Not struggled. It wasn't a struggle. Yeah.
All of my gigs were canceled. I was blacklisted from the church. A few threats.
Me deportaron el 6 de septiembre del 2010. Para mí fue muy difícil llegar al aeropuerto y saliendo del aeropuerto un grupo de pandilleros me secuestraron y empezaron como que odiar a las personas gay. Al principio pensaron que llevaba dinero, no llevaba. Después empezaron como que me iban a matar, que les daba asco. Y mientras uno me pegaba, el otro me violaba. Me violaron 4, me cortaron un poco la cara. Me dejaron tirada golpeada. Cerca de un basurero pasó alguien una señora y me ayudó. Llegué a la estación de policía donde ella me dejó porque no quiso entrar. Y fui a pedir Fui a pedir ayuda y en el momento en que me vieron se quedan viendo como sorprendidos, como escandalizados. Y solo me dice uno que entre al baño a limpiarme porque tengo la cara sangrada y golpeada. Y en lo que entro al baño, él se mete en el cuarto donde yo estoy y me obliga a tener sexo con él. Y me dice que lo mejor que puedo hacer es irme lejos, porque ellos no ayudan con eso, que ellos no defienden a esa clase de personas. ¿Qué significa ser transgender en centro de detención? Algo que no saben cómo tratar. Si como hombre, como mujer o como extraterrestre, porque te mueven para todas partes, te ponen lejos de las demás personas, te encierran en un cuarto a ti sola. Lo que me pasó a mí no lo puedo cambiar. No me pueden ayudar, me pasó, me tocó vivirlo. Pero sí pueden ayudar a otras personas que no les pase lo mismo que me pasó a mí.
You guys don't get that?
I'd like to propose a toast. All right, it feels good to have everyone here for Mother's Day, but today isn't just about mothers, it's also about sisters.
Since when?
Rhonda, I feel like I've missed out on so much of your life that I don't want anyone else to miss out.
Great.
So, to Rhonda and Sharon.
Why is he toasting her mechanic at my brunch?
Mama,
Our brunch.
Sharon isn't just Rhonda's mechanic. Sharon is Rhonda's girlfriend.
Wow.
Huh?
Really? Right now, dude?
Sis, I got this. It's time that we all stop pretending. Mother, your daughter is as gay as the day is long. I'm pretty sure that I could have found a more sensitive way to say that.
No, you nailed it.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I can't believe
I
this
did.
is happening right
Listen. Rhonda is not gay, fool. She's just waiting for God to make a man she's attracted to.
Okay,
That's all,
okay,
kids.
okay.
Oh, Ma, we all know that that's not gonna happen. Rhonda and Sharon are in love.
now. Okay.
And they're getting married! Drink up!
Don't say that. What? Don't say that.
Mama.
What?
What's happening?
Congratulations.
Mama, please. Mama, no, listen, please, listen.
Not gay, no, my baby. No!
Mama!
Oh,
not
God.
about that.
Black
Please
Jesus.
listen to me.
Black Jesus, help me!
What the hell do you think you're doing?
Rhonda,
We talked about you blasting music. Where'd you come from?
I was at school, sir.
Well, guess where I was? I went into town, met up with the fellas for a drink at O'Malley's. When I arrived, they were having a laugh. You remember Todd? Worked down the factory with me? He saw you skipping out that dance studio in ballet shoes. And I'm thinking, not my son, because we discussed it, and I said, no dance class.
I can explain.
Yeah, and how do you explain this? Found it under your bed. I told your mother. If you're too gentle with him, he's gonna grow up a sissy. I tried toughening you up. She kept saying, creatives need space to explore, so I let her raise you. And this is how you repay my kindness? What? Speak up. You're 17. You're a man, all right? So say it.
I'm a dancer. And I'm gay.
I want him out of my house! You're dead to me.
How could you betray me this way? I went against your father's words, supported your creativity, and you bring filth into my home. And you know the Bible condemns homosexuality, and God will punish you by giving you that disease.
But I'm not a sinner.
You are. If you love me, you will go before him, ask for forgiveness, and never engage in vile behavior. Understood? That's how it's gonna be?
One day in Boston, I was at the train station and a man approached me seeing my tote bag, which indicated my Muslim identity on it. And he began to aggressively shout at me, calling me a terrorist and Al-Qaeda. And in that moment, I was afraid. I am more afraid for my Muslim family members and community members who are visibly Muslim every day. I'm not supposed to be so much me. When I was younger, my mom told me one day, out of the blue, you had better not be a lesbian. You are black and Muslim and a girl, and you have too much going on. It's about a decade and a half later, and I've turned out to be a genderqueer bisexual dyke. Sorry, Mom. Recently, she did get me this shirt, though, as a present, so I would say she's come around. And as hard as it was to hear that as a middle schooler who was experiencing her first self-admitted crush on a girl, there was some truth to what she said. It's not always easy to be queer. It's hard to deal with the assumptions that come with a heteronormative society. I've had to wonder, do I answer the question, do you have a boyfriend, with just no, or actually I have a girlfriend? I've wondered whether to answer questions about my job frankly or to keep it vague. It can be really scary to experience the verbal harassment that happens walking hand in hand with a partner down the street. And it can really hurt to experience the alienation and rejection for who I love. And it can be really hard to hold a multiplicity of marginalized identities. It's less like addition and more like multiplication. There's this specific struggle and invisibility that comes with living at the intersections. Narratives in this country perpetuate the idea that all Muslims are Arab, all black people are Christian, and everybody in those communities are straight, or else perpetuate the myth that they are exceptionally homophobic. LGBT, mainstream representation, and spaces are predominantly white and lack diversity. It can feel like you have to choose, that you can't be all of who you are. Who do you align yourself with? What identity is most important to you? At a college party once, a friend asked me why I never stuck around at any gathering too long. And I realized in that moment, I was splitting my time between my various communities. I had spent the afternoon with Arab and South Asian Muslims at the Muslim Student Lounge. Now I was leaving a party with queer white kids and going to a party with mostly straight people of color. It didn't feel like there was any one place I could just be and be all of me. Intersectionality is the term coined by critical race theorist Kimberly Crenshaw, and it applies to all of us. It pushes back on the notion that gender is over here, race is over in that corner, and religion is way over there. Our experience of the world is informed by how all of our identities are linked together. We can't break them apart. We are whole. We win when we refuse to accept the limitations and definitions placed upon us. We win when we live as our fullest and most authentic selves. Thank you.
I recognize that dealing with cultural matters can indeed be daunting. And I also have the concern that feeling overwhelmed can sometimes lead to the avoidance of new ideas or experiences. So with that in mind, I propose two related suggestions that I believe can help people to engage with a culturally informed approach to mental health rather than avoid it. And these are to take a stance of informed curiosity and to ask different questions and ask questions differently. So a stance of informed curiosity stands in contrast to some models of culture and mental health, which suggests that one needs to be an expert in a particular cultural group in order to work with or understand the experiences of a member of that group. For example, many articles and book chapters talk about working with Asian clients or working with Hispanic clients. Although well-intentioned, that type of approach can inadvertently lead to the perpetuation of cultural stereotypes. There's the assumption, at least at some level, that members of a given group share values, beliefs, and experiences simply based on group membership. Though that can be the case, it is certainly not necessarily true.
I am a transgender man, which means the F on my birth certificate should have stood for false instead of female. Walking around as a woman in the world felt like walking with pebbles in my shoes. You know, it took the rhythm out of my swagger. It threw me off balance. It pained me with every step I took forward. But today, I'm a man of my own intention, a man of my own design.
I am a cisgender queer woman. Cisgender means the gender I was assigned at birth is still and has always been female. This doesn't make me natural or normal. This is just one way of describing the many different ways that we exist in this world. And queer is a cultural term, but in this case, it refers to the way that I'm not restricted by gender when it comes to choosing partners. I've identified in a few different ways, as a bisexual, as a lesbian, but for me, queerness encompasses all of the layers of who I am and how I've loved. I'm layers and not fractions. And for me, the fact that he was queer meant that I could trust this courtship from the very beginning. As queer and trans people, we are so often excluded from institutions and traditions. We create spaces outside of convention, including the conventions of time. So often, what we're told is this idea of the golden rule, that we should treat other people the way that we want to be treated. But the problem with that is that it assumes that we are the standard for other people, and we're not. We need to treat other people the way that they want to be treated, which means we had to ask.
I sometimes get out of balance. I'll end with this story. I sometimes push too hard. I do get tired, as we all do. Sometimes those ideas get ahead of our kind of thinking in ways that are important. And I've been representing these kids who've been sentenced to do these very harsh sentences, and I go to the jail and I see my client who's 13 and 14 and he's been certified to stand trial as an adult, and I start thinking, well, how did that happen? How can a judge turn you into something that you're not? And the judge has certified him as an adult, but I see this kid, and I was up too late one night, and I started thinking, well, gosh, if the judge can turn you into something that you're not, the judge must have magic power. I said, yeah, Brian, the judge has some magic power. You should ask for some of that. And because I was up too late and wasn't thinking real straight, I started working on a motion. And I had a client who was 14 years old, a young, poor black kid, and started working on this motion and the head of the motion was a motion to try my poor 14-year-old black male client like a privileged white 75-year-old corporate executive. And I put in my motion that there was prosecutorial misconduct and police misconduct and judicial misconduct. There was a crazy line in there about how there's no conduct in this county, it's all misconduct. And the next morning I woke up and I thought, now, did I dream that crazy motion or did I actually write it? And to my horror, not only had I written it, but I had sent it to court. A couple months went by, and I just had forgotten all about it. And I finally decided, oh gosh, I got to go to the court and do this crazy case. And I got in my car, and I was feeling really overwhelmed. And I got in my car, and I went to this courthouse, and I was sitting, oh, this is going to be so difficult, so painful. I finally got out of the car and I started walking up to the courthouse. And as I was walking up the steps of this courthouse, there was an older black man who was the janitor in this courthouse. When this man saw me, he came over to me and he said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm a lawyer." He said, "You're a lawyer?" I said, "Yes, sir." And this man came over to me and he hugged me. And he whispered in my ear, he said, "I'm so proud of you." And I have to tell you, it was energizing. It connected deeply with something in me about identity, about the capacity of every person to contribute to a community, to perspective that is hopeful. Well, I went into the courtroom, and as soon as I walked inside, the judge saw me coming in. He said, "Mr. Stevenson, did you write this crazy motion?" I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And we started arguing. People started coming in because they were just outraged. I had written these crazy things. And police officers were coming in, and assistant prosecutors and clerk workers. And before I knew it, the courtroom was filled with people angry that we were talking about race, that we were talking about poverty, that we were talking about inequality. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see this janitor pacing back and forth, and he kept looking through the window, and he could hear all of this hollering. He kept pacing back and forth. And finally, this older black man, with this very worried look on his face, came into the courtroom and sat down behind me, almost at counsel table. About 10 minutes later, the judge said we would take a break, and during the break, there was a deputy sheriff who was offended that the janitor had come into court. And this deputy jumped up and he ran over to this older black man. He said, "Jimmy, what are you doing in this courtroom?" And this older black man stood up and he looked at that deputy and he looked at me and he said, "I came into this courtroom to tell this young man, keep your eyes on the prize, hold on." I've come to TED because I believe that many of you understand that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. That we cannot be full, evolved human beings until we care about human rights and basic dignity. That all of our survival is tied to the survival of everyone. That our visions of technology and design and entertainment and creativity have to be married with the visions of humanity, compassion, and justice. And more than anything, for those of you who share that, I've simply come to tell you to keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Thank you very much.
One word to describe cultural humility for me is love, actually.
If I had to encapsulate cultural humility, or the whole concepts of cultural humility, it doesn't do it justice, but the word that I think of it is essence.
Escuchar.
Being.
You.
Opening.
Receive.
Compassion.
Love.
The principles of cultural humility offer one more framework to contribute to what has got to be our ultimate goal, yes? Our ultimate goal is that there will be a sense of equity, a sense of equality, and a kind of respect that we are driving forward.
An African-American nurse is caring for a middle-aged Latina woman several hours after the patient had undergone surgery. A Latino physician on a consult service approached the bedside and, noting the moaning patient, commented to the nurse that the patient appeared to be in a great deal of post-operative pain. The nurse summarily dismissed his perception, informing him that she took a course in nursing school in cross-cultural medicine and knew that Hispanic patients overexpress the pain that they're feeling. The Latino physician had a difficult time influencing the perspective of this nurse, who focused on her self-proclaimed cultural expertise.
It was curious to this Latino physician who, first of all, was Latino, not like all, in his case, not like all Mexican Americans know everything there is to know about Mexican American patients. That wasn't it, but he might have been a resource for that African American nurse in that moment that she didn't feel like she needed, again, because she had bought into this notion of competence, of cultural competence.
The distinction between cultural humility and cultural competence was that we were in a process and a relationship that had many other layers to it, and that we were less comfortable with even the term of competence, in a way that I think people understand well, and that it implies, especially for people who are providers and are trained in academia, that you are then all-knowing and all-powerful. And we felt like that was not what was happening for us as we were learning from community and understanding in a very practical way how families were coming to the hospital and feeling as if they really were not being heard from their own heritage and history, and how that impacted what they came to the hospital with that we didn't know anything about, hadn't even a clue about. For us, this is part of the humility piece of it, getting to understand that, not trying to humiliate you, not trying to make you feel bad, trying to help us all understand that life is like this, and to, in a certain sense, be really happy about not knowing.
In terms of cultural humility, we were really challenged to think, I think, a little bit more deeply about what culture is and how it doesn't mean thinking about a list of traits that you can ascribe to people, but that it's actually, that involves you and your assumptions and how you project your assumptions onto somebody else, and then versus what is their actual experience and who they actually are.
I first heard about cultural humility when I was a graduate student in the master's program here at San Francisco State, but I feel like I first understood cultural humility as a concept a lot earlier in my life. It came from a place of invisibility, a place of kind of suppressing who I was as a woman of color, and now has completely transformed as an educator, realizing who I am, where I stand in the classroom, what my privilege is, but also what my voice means in the world and what it means as an educator. It came from trying to fit in, to do whatever I could to be Indian at home and not out in the world, and not express that. And it's become this marker of identity that I knew was always there, that I could never really express growing up. And now it's saying who that person is and acknowledging both my own power and privilege in I gotta check myself kind of way. In the same respect, it's also saying I am a woman of color, I have something important to say, and here I am.
I think as long as power and privilege exists in society, we will always be struggling with being too humble as women of color, as women who come from working class backgrounds, as women who come from low income backgrounds or under-resourced backgrounds, right? As long as there's power and privilege in society, I know I will always be struggling with that, and I struggle with that on a daily basis.
I first became passionate about cultural humility. As an undergraduate student, I was interning with an organization, and they were holding a cultural competency training for Pacific Islanders and working with Pacific Islander communities. And as a biracial Pacific Islander woman, I was really excited and anxious to attend the training and to really learn about the material that was going to be sort of discussed and how others were going to learn, and myself included, about Pacific Islander culture and working with Pacific Islanders around health issues that were important to the community. And I think after attending the training, I realized that there was a sense of achievement and completion for those who participated. And I then was introduced to cultural humility as an undergraduate student in a class, just so happened around the same time. And I realized that a sense of achievement and accomplishment and competence and understanding sort of limits your learning.
I can't really tell you what cultural humility means to me. I feel like I practice it, and that's how I know. But one thing that I think about or that I can practice is cultural humility es poder hablar el idioma en el que me puedo expresar mejor, y el idioma donde encuentro palabras de poder contarle a alguien exactamente cómo me estoy sintiendo.
Coming from a background in science and coming into public health and not ever hearing cultural humility in the sciences was very telling for me, because culture is not something that's emphasized. It's not something that's talked about in a relevant way. There have always been very clear barriers present for particular minorities in science. You can see it when you're in the science classes. You can see it when you're in study groups. You can see it when you're looking at your professors. And I'm not just talking about racial minorities. I'm talking about a lot of underrepresented minorities in the sciences, like their race is a factor, but gender, sexual orientation.
Cultural humility is a multi-dimensional concept, and certainly Melanie Tervalon and I conceptualized 3 dimensions.
The first is lifelong learning and critical self-reflection. And in that critical self-reflection, it is the understanding of how each of us, every single one of us, is a complicated, multidimensional human being. Each of us comes with our own histories and stories, our heritage, our point of view. You're looking at me now. I am very fair-skinned. When I was a little girl, my hair was blonde. My eyes are blue. People often tried to call me anything but African American. I have a history My identity is rooted in that history. My parents gave me the knowledge of my own social identity, and my own experience in life has created that. I get to say who I am.
The second tenet, after self-reflection and ongoing lifelong learning and development, is this notion that we must mitigate the power imbalances, to recognize and mitigate the power imbalances that are inherent often in our clinician patient or clinician client or service provider community dynamics.
And then finally, the piece that I would offer that Jan and I feel people often either don't read or don't like, which is, and the institution has to model these principles as well.